Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This webinar will explore the combination of Chargebee and Stripe and how you can use it to accelerate your revenue growth. A little bit of housekeeping before we begin. Today's webinar is going to last 1 hour, including Q&A. We're going to mute everybody that comes in past this point, but feel free to write into us with questions, any questions you might have. We're hoping for this to be a conversation. And if we can't get to your questions during the presentation, we'll definitely get to them during the Q&A. And if you miss anything, don't worry about it, because all of these slides will be up on a landing page in 72 hours, and we'll contact you once it's up so you can go back and check it out. This whole thing is being recorded. Okay, so let me talk about who you're going to be conversing with today. I'm Johan. I'm a product marketer at Chargebee. And joining me are Fred and Phil from Freedom. And you'll hear from them in just a second after I set some context. Okay. So if you're here, you're using Chargebee and Stripe for your subscription and billing needs. And over the next half hour or so, we're going to dig into how you're using them together and what challenges you can use them to solve moving forward. Let's talk about a question that we get all the time, though, before we begin, it's how is Chargebee different from Stripe? Our answer is always the same. We don't compete, we complement. A customer of ours put it beautifully. Stripe is developer-facing and Chargebee is customer-facing. And using them together, you get the best of both worlds. Chargebee sits between your business and Stripe to give you a layer of payment abstraction and usability. So in this webinar, what we're going to cover is we're going to cover 3 umbrella topics. We're going to cover revenue generation, revenue recovery, and customer retention. We're talking about 6 ways to grow your revenue, and you can see those 6 ways presented here. We'll dive into each one of them as we move forward. But first, let me get to my guests. Thank you so much for joining us, Phil and Fred. Tell us a little bit about Freedom to begin with.
Sure. So I'm Fred. I'm the CEO of Freedom. We make software that helps people reduce distractions so they can do better quality work. We have a platform that works across Mac, Windows, iOS, and Android through a partner that allows us to basically turn off the noise so you can get better quality work done. And by that we mean turning off email, turning off Facebook, turning off Twitter, turning off fantasy sports, or any sort of distractions that are competing for your time. And so that's Freedom in a nutshell. Glad to be here today.
Fantastic, fantastic. We're so glad to have you. Can you tell us what a day at Freedom looks like?
Sure. Yeah, a day at Freedom. Well, we are a team that is about half remote, half local. So our office is in Durham, North Carolina. And so Durham is part of the Research Triangle Park. It's where University of North Carolina is, Duke and NC State, 3 great institutions. And there's a lot of great startup activity here. Our office is in Durham, but we've got employees all throughout the United States. And so a day at Freedom is, we start the day with a stand-up meeting. We are in the office, we're remote, we're working collaboratively on lots of different things going on. So it's a very interesting business. It's a very interesting place to be. Seeing like how you grow a business remotely and but also work with people directly.
Right. It's so nice to get a behind the scenes of how you guys do what you do. Phil, you use Chargebee a lot, right? Almost every day. Can you tell us what a typical day with Freedom and Chargebee looks like?
Sure. I'd say one of the main things is I've got the dashboard in front of me. It's on a browser tab. And so always checking in on that, so I can look at the metrics and how we're performing for the day in terms of signups and revenue, and just watch all the numbers. So that's kind of my main interface with Chargebee on day to day. But I'm also working a lot with other features in whether it's anything from setting up discount codes to working on the emails in the Chargebee system.
Okay, and we'll jump straight into that. Fred, can you tell us a little bit about your journey with Stripe?
Sure. So Freedom, we've been around for a number of years. We got started as a product that was just selling on a major version model, sort of an older traditional software model.
Right.
A couple years ago, we decided that we wanted to switch that business model over to a subscription model. It made sense. Keeping up, software has turned into a process that really does require a subscription model. And so we started looking into transforming the business around that subscription model. Okay. And where we got started was a very basic reference implementation with Stripe. So that's kind of how we sort of first rolled the MVP of the product out, and started learning about the subscription business. We use Stripe as our gateway, as our source of subscriptions, that was fine to get started. But as we matured the business and we saw uptake with our consumers, we needed to move on to something more robust.
Right. So let's dig into that transitionary period a little bit. So Stripe helped you get started, and when did you begin to notice that you needed something more?
It wasn't too soon after we really launched our product in earnest. So we had a couple of months as we rolled it out sort of very slowly and selectively, and we were starting to build our subscriptions. And it didn't. We noticed, okay, this isn't the easiest process, but it's fine. But then there was a point where we essentially flipped the switch and moved the business model over onto the new model. And it wasn't too shortly thereafter that we decided we needed to move on to something more robust. And there were any number of reasons for that, and I can go into it. We kind of ran into it, and we had a good problem of having, customers. Once we've made that business model switch, we really did run into the problem pretty much right off the bat.
Okay. So since we're covering revenue generation first, can you tell us about the payment methods that you were accepting with Stripe?
Sure. With Stripe, we were just accepting credit cards.
Okay. And was one of the reasons you chose Chargebee the different payment methods that it supported over and above cards?
Yes. So previously, when we sold sort of on the direct model, the non-subscription model, we accepted credit cards and we accepted PayPal. We were using, I think, PayPal as our gateway at that point in time. And when we made the switch over to only credit cards, we realized that we were definitely leaving a good bit of business on the table from customers that didn't have credit cards or didn't want to put their credit card information in or preferred PayPal. So that was a pretty big priority for us. We're a consumer product. I don't know if I sort of, we sell direct to consumer. We're doing a lot of transactions. We have a large number of customers. So having payment methods that are just, have wide distribution and are already in the hands of consumers is really important to us. And so, just being able to move over to a service where we can accept multiple payments was a really big deal for us.
Yeah, I'd add to that the international aspect of it as well, with PayPal especially.
Right. So multiple payment methods help you be more flexible with payments.
Absolutely. And so we also use Amazon payments, which isn't a huge portion of our payment base, but it's another sort of nice option for people to have, because as Amazon grows, and surely it has, people do keep their payment methods up to date in Amazon.
Right. So payment methods is the first thing that I want to cover, and I won't go too much into cards because a lot of people and everybody listening is using cards with their online business. So all I'll say on the cards front is that with Chargebee and Stripe, you can accept all kinds of cards from different card networks like Visa and MasterCard, Diners Club. You can also accept prepaid and gift cards, credit and debit cards. And you've covered the wallet side of things. You talked about PayPal and Amazon Pay. Where do you guys land on Apple Pay? Is that something you're considering implementing as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit down the road for us, but when you look at the features, the fact that people who are using Apple payments or doing any sort of transaction through Apple, which is a tremendous amount of people, are going to have reliable payment methods on board. And Apple is making it easier to transact payments. I think they still have a little bit of work to do there, but yeah, I mean, it's a very robust option. You want to have payment methods where ideally a consumer has some sort of external motivation to keep that payment method up to date, above and beyond just using your service. And so that can be really valuable.
Right. I wanted to ask you guys about how you evaluate a payment method before you implement it. So why did you choose PayPal and Amazon over all the other wallets that are out there?
I think PayPal, we already had experience with it, and have had sort of uniformly a good experience with PayPal. And then Amazon was, I think, just a little bit of a, actually Chargebee enabled it. It hadn't been on our radar, and but we said, what the heck, let's give this a try. Phil, I don't know if we gave it too much more thought than that, but it just made sense selling to consumers.
Yeah, and the other thing with PayPal is we were actually hearing that from customers. They were asking for that option, so that kind of moved us even further down that path.
Okay. So another payment method that I want to talk about is offline payments. And by offline payments, I don't mean cash or check, but that your customer doesn't need to be online to pay you. And why this is an advantage with Chargebee and Stripe is, let me explain. So you can set up communication between your bank and your customers so that payments are automatically deducted every month, no hassle on either side. That's why it's called an offline payment. And the network that enables this kind of communication is called the ACH network. Now, authenticating banks on the ACH network can be a time-consuming process, but not with Stripe. Stripe integrates with a tool called Plaid, and Plaid authenticates bank accounts in a matter of minutes. And with Stripe, you're looking at ACH timelines that can actually compete with card timelines. It's cheaper and it makes sense if you're B2B because it's more secure and there are less payment failures. While 6% of card payments fail, only 1% fail on the ACH network. So that's a good tool to leverage for revenue generation. Let me jump into fraud. We can't talk about payments without talking about fraud. Fred, as a B2C company, do you deal with a lot of fraud?
I wouldn't say we deal with a lot of it, but we certainly have. I would say sort of the main thing that we would deal with is credit cards being used inappropriately or without the account holder's permission by another member of the family, those sorts of things. We do see it. And then you do also every once in a while encounter people who are using your checkout process to test credit cards. Not to jumping ahead a little bit, but we're talking about Stripe and Stripe Radar. Like, yeah, that's been very valuable in stopping those transactions before they go through and, get into a chargeback.
Right, right. So Stripe Radar works on this machine learning algorithm, and it can catch most of the fraud that online merchants might encounter. And how Chargebee can help close the loop on this is that if Stripe flags a payment as fraudulent, Chargebee, on the other hand, will mark the subscription so that you can go check it out in Chargebee. And you can decide whether you want to block or allow or review the payment in Stripe, and Chargebee will follow through with whatever rules you set up in Stripe Radar. The default rules will catch most of the fraud you might encounter, but if you want more control over that, you can set up custom rules and Chargebee will follow through. Another way you can integrate a little more security into your checkout process, especially if you're using your own checkout pages, is with Stripe.js. Stripe.js is a super simple tool, and it's so easy to implement. You just have to copy a little bit of code from Stripe and paste it into the code for your checkout page. And credit card information goes straight to Stripe servers, completely bypasses yours. So you don't have to deal with all the compliance side of things. Fred, when you use Stripe and before you moved to Chargebee, you were using your own checkout pages, right? Did you implement Stripe.js?
Yes, our first checkout page, we implemented Stripe.js, and we basically just used the standard checkout form. Yep.
Okay, okay. What was your experience with it like?
So it was, there were positives and negatives. So the positives are, it's extremely simple to implement. For, let's say your business only is selling one subscription, for example. You're a startup and you're really MVPing it. That can fit quite nicely. But the moment you get into any sort of complexity around the subscriptions, that becomes a little bit of a challenge. The other challenge we ran into is we wanted more flexibility around being able to give discounts, and offers to customers, and that was not supported in Stripe.js. And so we ended up then doing a re-implementation of the Stripe.js, basically the Stripe checkout form, which we did through the Stripe API. And that was a time-consuming process, which I think was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, where we said, we need a more robust payment method. But that being said, it's a fine solution when you're getting started, or if you have an extremely simple business, it can definitely do the job. Right,
right. Thanks so much for that perspective. The re-implementation part you were talking about was super interesting. I didn't realize that might be a problem. Moving on, the other way that you can generate revenue is with multiple payment gateways. And how this fits into our story is, and Phil, you talked about this when you said, when you mentioned the international market. The thing about global selling is that you've got a lot of diversity of customers and geographies, and your payments need to match that kind of flexibility and diversity. And Chargebee can really help you get that off the ground with multiple currencies, multiple gateways, multiple payment methods. We even support multiple languages, and you can configure multiple tax rules for different geographies that you're dealing with. And the feature specifically that ties all these things together is the smart routing feature. And there's a screenshot of it that you can see. So what smart routing does is it allows you to set up rules for payments and gateways, and it's a one-stop shop to deal with all of this diversity. If you look at the screenshot, you can see this is from a customer of ours. He's routing card payments in pounds through Stripe, and card payments through US dollars through authorize.net, and direct debit payments through pounds through Go Cardless. So smart routing ties all these different things together, multiple payment gateways and currencies. So that covers revenue generation, the different payment methods that you can implement, and the diversity that you can implement on the payment front if you're thinking of going global. Moving on, let's talk about revenue recovery. Phil, can you give us a picture of how you approach revenue recovery at Freedom?
Sure. I think starting at the very beginning, if you think about the life cycle of a subscription, when someone initiates that subscription, the challenge is to ensure that it's going to continue to be charged on a recurring basis. Whether in our case we have monthly plans and annual yearly plans. Okay. So the initial communication is important, but when we talk about recovery, I assume you're talking about if there's a failure in the recurring. So this is where it actually goes into what we call the dunning process. Right. And a series of emails. And so within Chargebee, what we can do is we can set up any number. We have 4 dunning attempts and concurrent emails that are sent. Those can be separated as well, but we send those emails notifying the customer whether it's the charge has failed, or if it's an expired card, or if there's no card on file, which is a really interesting case. I think we'll have an opportunity to talk about that in a bit. But this is a really interesting place to kind of test and understand your customer and what's going to work. So we measure that with what we call our recovery metric on a monthly basis to really understand how those communications in our dunning funnel are working for bringing back the failed payments so that they are successful.
Right. I'm soon gonna ask you about your dunning emails and how you optimize them. But for now, let me talk about how we approach revenue recovery at Chargebee. So at Chargebee, we see it as a sideways funnel. You've got all of these payments coming through, and at the top of the funnel, what you can do is make sure that none of them fail. But as you move through the funnel, you find that sometimes it's unavoidable that payments fail. And at that stage, you can get a little more active with recovery. And like you were saying, dunning emails are a great example of what you can do to actually recover a payment once it's failed. But post preventive and active recovery, once the failed payment is through, you can keep getting more efficient and ergonomic with improved collections, and we'll talk about that soon. But let's go through the sequence. Let's start with preventive recovery. I'm sure everybody listening using Stripe has Stripe's card updater running in the background, and what the card updater will do is catch cards that have expired, and Stripe enables this with a tie-up with card networks like Visa and MasterCard and Diners Club. And what they do is if a card is updated on the network, it's automatically updated in Stripe's records. And so it's automatically updated for you as well. So no involvement from your customer, and the card is updated automatically. But just in case a few cards slip through the cracks, reminder emails can be a huge advantage. Phil, can you tell us a little bit about the reminder emails that you send out?
Sure. So we have a series of emails if a card is expired or if a card isn't on file. Those are sent. We are in terms of reminder about an upcoming renewal. We're still testing our options and our ideas there, looking at kind of best practices with that. Currently, we don't send a reminder email that your subscription is upcoming, and kind of look at other companies that and how they're doing that. And for example, Netflix, you don't get a notification that you're about to be charged, or even Google Business for that matter. It's more of a notification that you've been charged. So we're looking at those models, but also understanding that trying to understand what's the best for our customers. So we hear from them both ways, and I guess you could say our jury is still out on that in terms of how we're going to handle messaging for upcoming recurring charges.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the recovery metric that you were talking about, how does it influence your approach to these reminder emails?
Well, it's, since we're looking at charges that fail and then subsequently succeed, right? We have, I think, it affects our dunning email content more so, I think, than these reminder emails.
Right. I was wondering if they influence the preventive side of things as well, but not really.
Not so much, I don't think. I think that's more on us in terms of keeping the customer engaged with the product and other things that we're doing outside of Chargebee.
Okay.
I will say this, just on a not necessarily our company's experience, but having just gone through and had a charge card expire, the one that we keep on file with most of our B2B services, the ones that were proactive about letting you know that your card was going to expire, these companies were way more effective in getting me to actually go in and update their credit card versus the ones that sort of wait for failure. And so it's just, a takeaway is it's extremely important to have that awareness in your funnel to get customers to come in and update their credit cards and help them do that.
Right.
Yeah, and a nice feature in Chargebee is in those emails that we send for those expired cards, there's a button, a CTA right there in the email that drops the user right on the page where they can update.
Right. The Pay Now button. We're going to come to that really soon when we talk about improved collection. Just in case, you've got Stripe updater, you've got your reminder email, and, just in case a payment falls through both nets, what we encourage our customers to do is set up backup payment methods. Just imagine you could collect 2 payment methods from your customer to charge one when the other fails, for example. It's a great way to make sure that you have a higher percentage of getting that assured revenue. Because if you have a card on file, for example, you can set up a wallet as well. So one or the other is bound to be successful. But yeah, let's talk about active recovery. And Phil, I'm just going to defer to you because you've told us so much about dunning. So
Sure. Yeah, so this is when for whatever reason a user's a charge fails, and this can be from expired cards, no card present, bad cards, sometimes a bad number, and there's some interesting things about that. And I've even been reading about some psychology about what people do with their credit card numbers that are on file. But in terms of the dunning, so if you think about that first message that goes out and what a user needs to know, what a customer needs to know about their subscription is that charge failed. And typically the first messages are, hey, it failed, don't worry about it. We've got you covered, we're gonna try again. And as you go through the sequence, you want to sort of escalate the urgency of the message. So we have it set up with a series of 4 emails, and we can control the spacing of those. And we're still testing a number of days between spacing, but essentially it goes on we're on about a 10-day dunning cycle where we have 4 emails spaced out over that time. So we escalate the urgency of that message as they go through the process, and continually try to give them a quick and easy way to either update their card info, which is the one CTI was referring to earlier, or the Pay Now button, which is another way that they can instantly pay that invoice that's due.
Right.
So, and in that as well, there's an opportunity to remind, particularly if it's an annual subscription, to remind the customer about the subscription and about freedom, and insert some values and benefits in that message as well.
Right. So one thing Chargebee does is it decouples the dunning retries from the dunning emails that you can send out. So you can set up 4 retries, but the dunning emails you send out, you can send out as many as you like, and as many as you like between retries. And another thing I want to touch upon is that you can use dunning for online payments and offline payments. If you're accepting direct debit through the ACH network, you can set up a dunning cycle there as well. And the timelines might differ, but the process is more or less the same. Phil, tell us about your experiments with content in the dunning emails. Where did you start, and what did you learn as you went through experimentation?
Yeah, I think in terms of where we started, it was pretty much a very, very transactional. You know, it happened. Please update, or please, please, pay this invoice, etc. But very transactional. But really, just in experimenting with not only the language, and I mentioned this before, like those initial, the initial fail is less urgent than as it goes on, and kind of incorporating that urgency as you go through the process and the sequence of emails, as well as our experiments, just our look and feel of the emails has evolved over time as well. Just trying to give it a more polished and professional look. I think that has helped as well. And I mentioned the recovery metric, so we've actually we keep an eye on that. We've been watching that number improve, so that's been good.
Fantastic. And Chargebee enables all these experiments, and definitely a tool that you can leverage. Moving on to improved collections and the Pay Now button that we've been talking about for so long. So let's just say you've got a bunch of different charges against a customer. What the Pay Now button allows you to do is consolidate all those charges in a single email. And it's really simple from your customer's perspective also, because all they need to do is press a button and they're redirected to a secure page where they can complete the payment. And you're not constrained by payment method. You can use the Pay Now button with cards, PayPal, Amazon, direct debit. Oh, sorry, not direct debit, because that's an offline payment. But you can also use it for one-time payments or recurring payments. It's a great way to make payment collection a little more ergonomic. Moving on to our last bucket of customer retention. We've talked a lot about email so far, and this is something we are discovering more and more at Chargebee and pushing more and more for, is making better use of transactional emails, because they boast 2 times the open rate of their non-transactional counterparts. And that spells opportunity. It spells opportunity to build better relationships. And it's something we've tried as well. On the invoice email that sends out, we send out, we segment and target customers and make it a little more personal. So I know that transactional emails are bound to payment events, but there's so much more that you can use them for, especially when you consider the amount of data that's coming into Chargebee. So all of this payment data, geography, user information that you can use to segment and personalize transactional emails. Looking at each stage of the life cycle, whether it's activation, acquisition and activation, retention, and revenue, you can see a list of the different transactional emails that you'll have to send out at each stage. And each one is an opportunity to build a better relationship. So, Fred, you mentioned at Freedom, you've separated transactional emails from the rest of your emails. Can you walk us through the thought process of why you separated the two?
Sure. We have a couple of different ways in which we get in contact with customers, and it is through the life cycle. So when a customer first appears on our radar, they go into our CRM, and we use that CRM because we have it very tightly integrated into our platform and applications. So we're using a product called Intercom for that purpose, where we can do highly segmented communications. And we can do chat, we can do push notifications, things along those lines. When we, attempt to contact all of the users, is a sort of a mass mailer service. And definitely for everything revenue related, we use Chargebee. And so it's kind of and I think a lot of companies probably run into this. You've got to use kind of the various tools that are suited for different stages in the journey and have the affordances for the different stage in the journey. So you will be spread across a couple of different services, but you want to use the best tool for that particular point in the journey.
Right. So I want to talk about three beautiful examples that we've got from our customers who are trying out our new version of email notifications, how they've used the segments and transactional emails to build better relationships. One of our customers, so he's customized his activation emails to send out the support number, the contact us. The contact us goes out only to customers on a particular plan when they activate to a particular plan. There was another who automated all of his transactional emails except for his big customers. The big customers got a more personalized email, and that he used Chargebee to create those segments and target those customers. And possibly my favorite so far is one customer selling in India. Last month we celebrated Diwali, and he sent out a Diwali coupon as part of his transactional emails. And Chargebee allowed him to segment by geography, and we thought that was a really interesting use case as well. Phil, you've been experimenting with version 2 of email notifications too, right? How have you found them so far? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's been great. So I have yet to push them live, or we are in what we call the dry run mode right now, where we're doing a comparison between V1 and V2 email. But what I found is that a lot more options with segmentation, just the look and feel of them is definitely it's up quite a few notches. But again, the segmentation is really interesting. So an example of that and how we're using that is we have our monthly plan and our yearly plan. When a recurring monthly subscription succeeds, we send out an email about that, and it's customized just for the monthly user. And again, I think I mentioned Google Business. I kind of used that as sort of a model, but it basically says that your subscription has renewed. There's nothing you need to do. Just wanted to remind you. And it's also an opportunity, and we were just talking about this after yesterday, is when we have new features or something else we want to add to that, we can on a monthly basis. But for the annual, we go a little bit deeper into reminding them about the features, values, and the benefits of the product, because it may be some time, for example, if they've unsubscribed from our other channels of email, this is one way they're still going to hear from us through emails when they get their subscription renewal, as well as their invoice. So great opportunity to renew that conversation about the product.
Right, right. So that covers our three umbrella topics. What we believe that Chargebee and Stripe make a great combination, and they complement each other in great ways. So we've covered revenue, recovery, and retention. But we're planning on doing a lot more of these webinars, and we'll address, you can see the list of things we want to address. It's a huge list. So stay tuned for more. And to wrap up, I just want to thank you so much, Phil and Fred. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to start taking questions now. And I'm going to hand over the reins to a product expert at Chargebee, Prashant. You guys have written in with questions. Thank you so much. We'll be covering them now. All right. Okay, so we'll wait a minute or two because we haven't gotten too many questions as yet. Feel free to type them in now.
Hey guys, so the first question which we are seeing here is about emails. Okay, so I'll just read the question.
Seems like he went on mute then.
Lost audio from the Chargebee side.
Yeah, try now.
Yeah, can you please mute your
I
speaker? Hey guys, this is Prashant from Chargebee. I'm from the product team. So I'm reading the first question here from Z about email verification settings. So whether Chargebee has default email verification and whether Chargebee tries to validate an email. Just to answer the question, right now we do not have the email verification and it's in the pipeline. This will be available soon and we'll update you about it. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. The next question is about how Plaid integrates with Chargebee. So I have Rajesh as well to support me. Yeah. Hey.
Hi everyone, I'm Rajesh from Chargebee support team. So I'm just going to answer what Boyan just asked. So he's asking how Plaid integrates with Chargebee. So we support the Plaid integration with Stripe. So what happens is Stripe, your Stripe account should have a direct integration with Plaid. This would allow you to instantly verify the bank account information given by your customers. And then the invoices that are generated during the sign up would be appropriately moved to the paid or payment use. Paid status, and only then the subscription would be created going forward.
Right. Thanks, Rajesh. The next question is from Taylor Armstrong. We'll take that question. Could you speak a little more about Pay Now option? We are interested in allowing users to use the payment options and invoicing. Right. So Pay Now option allows you to send an email to your customers who have unpaid invoices, and then you can expect your customers to make payments instantly. We will share the details about the flow and the steps after this webinar. Okay, this another question from Z. We're just reading through the question. Yeah, so this is about disputed charges. Just give us a moment. So until Rajesh is back, I hope the session was helpful for everybody. And if you have any questions, you can please post it across.
Yeah. So when it comes to chargebacks, although it's not fair to say that you can completely avoid it, or you can. The only thing, I mean, the best practice. There are certain best practices that can be followed to make sure that the chargebacks from your customers can be reduced to a really great extent. So let me just start off with saying how you can deal with them and maximize your chances of winning the dispute when customers raise a chargeback. And then I'll talk about how you can actually avoid cases where they raise the chargeback, because regardless of you winning the dispute or not, there is a certain amount of fee that you'd be charged when there is a chargeback. So the first thing is, yeah. So the first thing would be the proofs that are suggested by Stripe. So you can probably go by what they say. So on a general note, what you can submit on a general note, you can submit the invoice for the transaction, the subscription details that are present in your system. So the dates and time. And the most important thing that we've seen in our experience that can help you win a dispute is the email correspondence with customer, because that is going to be a crucial factor to actually prove that he is a genuine customer and not, he's a genuine customer who for whom you actually deserve to win the dispute. Now, talking about reducing cases like this, first thing would be the trend that has been observed in cases of chargebacks is customers try signing up with randomly generated junk email. So there are a couple of websites which provide you with use and throw email addresses. So chargebacks are generally raised from customers who sign up with those. So having a track of these kinds of emails so whenever there is a sign up, it's better to have a check at your end to understand if the email address belongs to this list or probably from one of these sites. So in a couple of minutes, I'll be able to share a few examples of what these sites are. And having a track of this would actually help you reduce chargebacks to a great extent. And having a close watch of the customer's activity on your product or website is again going to be a great factor, because a genuine customer would definitely start using or will have a good amount of activity once he signs up. So if you really notice that there hasn't been any activity from the customer, probably in the first 1 or 2 months, then I think something's fishy. Then you should actually start looking at things a bit more seriously, get in touch with him, have things on the email. And I think, these are some of the steps that can help you reduce the chargebacks. But again, there's no fair answer of understanding how you can completely avoid it.
Fine, Rajesh. Another question from one of the attendees. Do most Chargebee customers provide a service actually go for a bill forward scenario or a bill backward scenario? And if they bill forward, do they block the service during dunning? Okay, I think this is more of understanding the domain or the vertical you are in. Most of the SaaS services or products would try to bill upfront. And if it is a usage-based scenarios or metered billing scenarios, you would bill backwards. Like you understand the usage for the month, and then you add the usage charges after it is understood. And if they bill forward, do they block service during dunning? So again, based on the policy you want, you can give a time period up to which you can allow your customers to make a payment. And after that, dunning can kick in. And dunning, you can set up how many retries you want to attempt for a payment collection, and then remind your customers to make a payment or something. So this is the type of the, so if it is a SaaS vertical or something, you can go for a bill upcoming or upfront, or else later based on the usage.
Hazy, just reading through your questions. Just give me a couple of minutes. Any email with this customer or the specific email about a dispute charge in which the customer claimed dispute is a mistake. So I understand you're asking about an email notification which informs you that there has been a chargeback. So if that's the case, then this is something Stripe will be able to help you with, because generally what happens is customers get in touch with their bank and raise the chargeback, and this is recorded in your payment gateway. So I believe it would be Stripe would be a better Stripe's team would be better off answering this rather than us. So I think you should probably get in touch with them for this part alone. And regarding the second question, how to track users who signed up charges. So I understand you're talking about who disputed, who raised the dispute. So again, there'll be a record of this in your payment gateway account. So probably you will have to, again, when there is a notification, you really don't have to check your account periodically. But if there isn't something like this, then yeah, a regular check of the disputes tab in your payment gateway account should be helpful. I hope I've clarified this, Z.
Wait, there's one more question on chat.
On chat, shall I?
Yes, take over.
Okay. Okay, just mute, no? We've got a question. We've got a question for Phil and Fred from Juliet. How difficult does it look to implement the new Chargebee email features?
Oh, Phil, you're muted.
Phil, I think you're on mute. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's taken some time, and it's been a bit of a challenge for me, just kind of working through some of the aspects of understanding segmentation and how to move segments from what we call our test site over to our live site. But that said, Chargebee support has been incredibly helpful and helping me walk through this and understand how we can get this live. So I think as we've worked through it, we've also found a number of things that I'm told are already on the roadmap, and features and fixes that will be live very soon. So it's been a collaborative process with Chargebee, which has been very good. Taken a little longer than I would have liked, but it's a new product, so I think I'm excited about it and excited to see it go live. And I think we're looking forward to some real improvements from it. But it's still in what we would call the test state or dry run, where we're observing side by side V1 and V2 and assessing it.
Thanks so much for your question, Juliet. We've got one from Taylor. I think this one's for Rajesh and Prashant. Each credit card company also provides documentations on types of disputes. So how do you respond to them, and how do you prevent them?
I think this is more of an info, right? Taylor, are you trying to just share another?
Yeah, I was actually not sure about how I can help you here.
Yeah, this is not a question, I think.
So in case you're...
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. Thanks, Taylor. Yeah.
Okay, mute. Okay, right. We've just got another one from an anonymous attendee. Can you please elaborate on the process of webhook notifications in the case of failed transactions?
Okay. Just a moment. Yeah. So I'll just start off with how Chargebee's webhooks actually function and just narrow down to the question you've asked. So our webhooks will help you understand the different activities on your site. And one of these is going to be the failed transactions. Along with this, you get to listen to other events like probably a successful payment, a subscription creation, a subscription cancellation, lots of other events like this. So all you have to do is, there's only one step that you'll have to follow for to listen to all of these events. Just go to settings. I don't know if I can just set it out like this. I'll do one thing.
We can share the
document.
details.
Yeah, that's also fine. So there's a documentation on webhook configuration. I think that should be pretty much helpful in understanding how to process it. But just to give you a gist of what the process looks like, you need to have a URL, your server URL that has to be configured in Chargebee, and Chargebee will start sending out webhook notifications to this URL. So based on the event that you've received, you can design an action at your end. So let's say it's a failed transaction. You can probably set up an email from your end to get in touch with the customer, something like that. So this is one thing, but there are certain cases where merchants are, but again, please note that you need to have developer assistance at your end to set up a webhook process. But again, if you do not have developer assistance, we've got you covered there. We've got an integration with an app called Moxtra. So Moxtra is basically an application that will help you receive the webhooks as to-do tasks, messages, and chat lists. So what happens is you get to avoid the development effort. Just integrate your Moxtra account with your Chargebee site, and any event on your site will land as a message on your mobile phone. So I think that should pretty much help you understand whenever there are failed transactions, although having a development effort will help you customize things to a great extent. I hope this clarifies the question. And again, Prashant, can you just share the Moxtra documentation as well?
Yeah, we'll share.
Yeah.
So the next question is about the new version of the email notifications. So the new version of the platform regarding to email notification, the dry run mode, if it is switched on, won't really start using. Right. Okay. So the question is that with the new versions of the email notification, there's an option to actually run your emails on a dry run mode, where the emails will be generated, but the emails will not be sent to your customers. So Boyan, you're right. The emails will be generated. The emails will not be sent to your end customers. You can compare the emails with your email version V1 as well. So you can actually, review and then actually switch on email V2. So that's the answer to your question, Boyan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I think we've covered all the questions. Moving forward, what we're going to do is send out a type form to all of you guys who've attended this webinar, and we'll ask you about what features you're interested in and any questions that you might have, so we can provide some support on the back end. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I definitely learned a lot from it, and Phil and Fred, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to both of you all.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was fun.
We'll get back to you with feedback that we get on the webinar. Thank you both.
Awesome. No problem.